afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank for the opportunity to present among and in front of such esteemed professors. My presentation will be concerning a specific tier of governance, the local one. And I will present here our research we conducted together with Professor Radvan, which was concerning the relationship between the level of detail in the constitutional regulation and the quality of the financial autonomy of local municipalities or self-governments. I would like to present some details of the European regulation as well within the framework of the presentation. Going to the first step, the European regulation. Common European rules for local self-government exist in Europe. However, not within the framework of the European Union, but rather in the Council of Europe, where there is a international convention in place, the European Charter of Local Self-Government, and we can see that it's quite very widely accepted in Europe. So all the four countries of our research, the four Visegrad countries, have ratified the charter. What is important from the perspective of my presentation are practically two provisions, the provision of Article 2 and of Article 9. Article 2 practically says that the principle of local self-government government should be included in the written law and, if possible, in the constitution of the ratifying countries. While Article 9 says that the financial aspect of local self-government is indeed very important, here, the explanatory report to the European Charter says that the legal authority to perform certain functions, so effectively local self-government itself, is meaningless if local authorities don't have financial resources to carry out these responsibilities and tasks. So what the European Charter does, it obliges the parties to enshrine the principle of local self-government in the written law and preferably in the constitution, but the principle of self-government in general, and also to ensure the proper financial autonomy of municipalities. However, there is no explicit obligation to include exact elements of financial autonomy into the constitutional framework. Now, our research exactly was connected to these financial elements of local self-government, and we essentially studied whether there is a positive correlation between the level of detailedness of the constitutional regulation and the quality of local financial autonomy. What steps were needed to reach a conclusion? Well, essentially 3 steps. First, that we had to assess the quality of the constitutional regulations as such. The second, and this was the hardest one, to assess the overall quality of local government financing systems in general, for which we used 2 indicators, statistical data and conclusions from international monitoring process. The first step was to rank the countries based on all the above criteria, and the fourth was to compare the conclusions. Regarding the assessment of the quality of constitutional regulations, we can see that we identified certain important points as to the constitutional regulation of local financial autonomy. I will not name them all. I hope that you can see that. What we can see is that the Polish constitution has the most detailed rules on the topic. which is followed by the Slovak one, then the Hungarian one, while the Czech constitution has the most deficient constitutional rules on local financial autonomy. So in this case, the situation was quite clear, and we could proceed to the next point, which was assessing the quality of the whole self-government financing system, at first based on statistical indicators. We used two indicators. Both indicators were recommended by a body of the Council of Europe. First was the own revenues of municipalities compared to the total municipal revenues. So essentially those revenues that are inherent to a city, to a municipality, compared to every revenue they get, including the revenues from the central government. Naturally, the higher the share of municipal own revenues, the better the quality of local financial autonomy. And the second criterion was the comparison of local tax revenues compared to total municipal revenues again. The same rule applies. The higher share of local tax revenues, the better the quality of local financial autonomy. So here we can see the results of the comparison of the 4 Visegrad countries. Now this picture looks quite different if we compare it to the previous statistics. We can see that the highest proportion of own revenues compared to total revenues, and also the highest proportion of local tax revenues compared to total revenues, is in Hungary by far. Not exactly the double of the average, but nearing the double of the average of the 4 countries. The second is Poland, virtually on the average of the 4 countries. Then Slovakia, tightly behind Poland, and the Czech Republic, again, has the worst figures in this sense, also in terms of own revenues and also in terms of local tax revenues compared to total revenues. However, the situation gets to be more interesting here when we assess the quality of local financial autonomy based on the monitoring reports. These monitoring reports were issued within the framework of the Charter, European Charter's monitoring process. Well, there could be debates on the fairness of these monitoring reports, but I don't want to go into details now because this was the only source of its kind we have. There is no other monitoring process, so we had to use some kind of soft indicator in our study. So what we found out was that the monitoring bodies were, well, I have to say that they were quite critical towards all of the 4 member states of the Visegrad group. But as you can see on the statistics, I tried to visualize a bit so it's more understandable. The least criticism was formulated towards the Czech Republic, which is striking. If we look at the constitutional regulation and the statistical results as well. Then relatively little criticism was formulated towards Slovakia. But the problem here was that the available report, the last one, didn't include a paragraph by paragraph assessment, only said that Slovakia complies with the basic requirements of the Charter, of Article 9 of the Charter. So it is quite hard to evaluate it paragraph to paragraph, but based on the, let's say, level of criticism, we placed Slovakia on the 2nd place, while Poland, having a much better statistical indicators, received much more criticism, and Hungary was arguably criticized the most. Very interesting that they proclaim non-compliance also in the case of local taxes, where Hungary had by far the highest proportion of local taxes compared to the other three countries. On the other hand, there was no compliance proclaimed in relation to any of the four countries. So, in this sense, nobody succeeded. So, only the final step was remaining, and that was to compare the results of the overall quality assessment to the assessment of the constitutional regulation. Based on the indicators we used, we reached the conclusion that the quality assessment did not correspond to the assessment of the constitutional regulation. In other words, we couldn't identify a positive link between the level of the constitutional detail and the practical functioning of financial autonomy. Here you can see why. Also visualized. You can see the ranking. It is only our ranking, right? On the level of detailedness of the constitutional regulation. We don't claim that the longest constitutional regulation is the best, but the level of detailedness did not correspond to the quality of the autonomy, because based on the two indicators, statistical and the monitoring process, all the four countries averaged in 2.5. So our hypothesis was not confirmed. At least was not confirmed according to our indicators we use in our research. Still, we concluded that from the perspective of financial autonomy, it cannot be to the detriment of municipalities that rules aimed at the protection of their autonomy find their way to the constitution. So we will definitely not claim that these rules are unnecessary. For example, in the constitution of Slovakia, there is a provision that is made to help municipalities protect their autonomy by turning to the constitutional court. So these provisions are definitely useful. However, it is questionable whether they have a real economic impact, at least in our four countries. The final question, kind of a food for thought, is whether we indeed employed the proper indicators and provided a reliable picture in this sense. So thank you very much for your attention.